Redditors assemble. r/AskReddit. What is the creepiest thing that's happened to you personally that made you question reality? I've told this before, but about 7 years ago I was at my mom's house. I lived next door, and this white car pulls into the driveway. We weren't expecting anyone, so I assumed they were lost and needed directions, and went to the door. A white woman in her 50s or 60s got out, along with the 9 or 10-year-old black girl. Surprised me, because I expected the kid to stay in the car if they just needed directions. I opened the door and the woman kind of nudges the girl towards me, both with big smiles on their faces. I said, "Hi, what can I help you with?" She asked if I was Baggy Raccoon and I said yes. She told me they went to a neighbor's house looking for me, and they pointed her to her house. I just kind of stared at me expectantly, like I was supposed to know the girl and be happy to see her. When I didn't react, the woman told me they were here to see the dentist. No dentists here. Small ranch-style house in a fairly rural neighborhood. No dentists here. Not anywhere near us. The woman and the girl just kept smiling. They didn't look confused. They just kept saying, "Are you sure?" Finally they left, and later I asked the neighbor who directed them to her house, and she said she never told the woman my name. That the woman asked for me specifically. It's always kind of haunted me. I really feel like I was supposed to know that girl. Like, if I was a guy, this would be someone trying to introduce me to a kid I didn't know I had. I honestly started wondering if I was nuts and had given up a child for adoption. It was that strange of a feeling. My mom firmly believes the girl will come back someday to tell me what it was about, and I think about it frequently. Drives me insane to wonder what they really wanted. Maybe they're from the future and the girl had a toothache. You're supposed to be a dentist. Dentist was definitely code for something and they just got the wrong house. Maybe you had the same name as whoever they were supposed to meet. Kind of freaks me out thinking it might be human trafficking or something. Did the little girl look scared? It definitely didn't feel sketchy, like there was something criminal going on. It felt more like they were trying to meet me without telling me why. Like they were excited to see me for the first time or something. The girl didn't look scared, just like they were waiting for me to realize I knew her. Not necessarily creepy, but definitely made me question reality. I used to work in a gas station. One regular customer was like night and day. One day he'd be soft-spoken and shy. The next he'd be obnoxious. His cigarette preference also changed from day to day. But he always came in the same work truck with the same guys at the same time of day. One day, he walked in and went straight to the bathroom. A minute later, he walked in again and came to the counter. Twins. It took me 8 months to realize they were twins. And not even identical twins, either. They just looked really similar. Similar story, but completely different. I got Chipotle for lunch today. When I got to check out, the same girl who started my bowl was there. I made some crack about how fast she was to beat me there, and she looked confused. I commented on how she started my food, and now was finishing it. She laughed and pointed at her sister at the beginning of the line. Similar story, but completely different. I think I just found my new favorite phrase. I have a story like this. My little sister and I look very much alike despite being 18 months apart. Similar faces, identical build, same height give or take half an inch. Both of us have dark curly hair, though hers is dyed reddish brown and has perfect ringlets. Mine is dyed black and has looser curls. Both wear glasses, etc. In high school, someone asked her why she changed her clothes between classes. We got a good laugh out of that. Then at Christmas last year, my husband walked into my mom's kitchen and asked why I was making chicken salad when I don't eat meat. Totally wasn't me. I was at the store picking up last-minute items. Heh. I had 2 bananas, connected at the stem part, broke them into 2, ate one, threw out the peel, came back for the other one and it's gone. I live alone. Either I have a rotting banana somewhere in my app or I've gone crazy. Update. It's been weeks, haven't seen, smelled the other banana. I'll accept that I just went bananas for that moment, sad face. Check your loft for monkeys, ghost monkeys, carbon monoxide monkeys. When I was a kid between 8 or 9, I used to wake up every night to headlights coming through my bedroom window. The lights would stop and turn off. Not as if a car drove by, but as if they were turned off. Then the long shadows of a man, as if we're looking through my window, would pass by and stop in front of my window. I would lay really still and pretend nothing happened, every night for months. Eventually I convinced myself it was imagination. Now that I think back, it stopped when my stepdad moved in. My mom was single, but I was convinced it wasn't real. Across the street lived my best friend whose mom was also single, and she refused to sleep in her bedroom. Her window faced my window. She told me years later it was because every night a man would park in her side yard and walk over to my yard. The long shadows were from the light in her yard. She eventually decided it was my dad checking on us and never told me until I was a teenager. It wasn't my dad. I asked him, so I thought I was crazy and hallucinating for years, and perhaps I wasn't, or two kids were having odd dreams at the same time every night. This is seriously creepy as hell. When I was younger, I was sleeping at my dad's house in which he recently moved in, and was finding it very hard to fall asleep, especially as the window had no curtains and my window was the first window people would pass by in order to get to the houses further down the balcony. Well, late in the night a man with his hood up passed by and happened to briefly glance in. Already scared I froze, and then that bastard came back and stared straight in, and locked eyes with me. It was scary as frick. Either your stepdad was stalking mom, or the stalker got scared off when he moved in. I worked at a small retail shop that sold mostly small accessories and clothes. I have never really believed in ghosts, but my coworkers always swore the place was haunted. Lights would flicker randomly and canvases would fall violently to the ground despite my efforts of propping them up so that they didn't. The thing that really made me question everything happened when I was closing alone at night. We had a sunglass display in the middle of the store. Just a flat glass shelf with a bunch of sunglasses laid out nicely on top. I walked past it to the register and hear this huge crash. Look back and all of the sunglasses were on the floor. It looked like somebody just took their arm and dragged it across the shelf, pushing them all off. There wasn't anything above the display, so nothing could have knocked it off. I don't have an explanation for it. It was right as I was about to close too. He was a rude ghost. It didn't want to be left alone, so it made a mess to make you stay longer. I dreamed it was dark, raining, and I was in the woods walking towards a campfire. There were 3 men around it whom I had never seen before. One was wearing a shirt and pants with huge white and black horizontal stripes on it, such as a prisoner might wear. I could not figure out why I was not scared in my dream. Fast forward 10 months later, we're hunting and camping. A friend brings along 3 of his friends that we had never met before. I have to go to the bathroom, buried a 50-gallon drum and put a seat on it, and my husband walks with me since it's dark. We start back and it starts to rain. We get to the clearing and there are his 3 friends around the fire, one wearing the outfit described above. I wasn't afraid in my dream, because my husband was behind me and I just couldn't see him. No one believes me. This happens to me all the time, where I have dreams of a random situation and then it actually happens. No one ever believes me either. It's annoying. I believe you. Mostly, because it happens to me a lot too. I forget about the dream until it actually happens, and then I can't remember if it was a dream, déjà vu, or if I'm just repeating what happened to me before. Posted this before, but thought it would fit here too. By my hometown there was a hiking trail that people went to very infrequently. It was along the side of the Niagara Escarpment, so it had some climbable cliffs and some very shallow caves that you could crawl around on. I went with some friends when I was 19, 20, and we were crawling around and found a cave that went pretty deep. We had never been in there before, had never even seen it before, so we pushed forward and decided to check it out, even though we had no flashlights, and this was when cell phones didn't really have a flashlight function. We stepped into the cave and it was easily 20-30 degrees cooler than outside. Upon looking around with which light we had, we noticed it was really clean inside the cave, as in it didn't have beer cans littered everywhere like all the other small caves did. While in there we got a really eerie feeling after being in there shortly, hearing weird and strange things, feeling like we were being touched, poked and pulled, and not having any way to figure out who was doing it, because it was too dark. We were just using lighters to see what was around us. We were convinced one of us was messing with the others, although anytime we sparked up a lighter, we were all decently far apart. We decided to hightail it out of there after only a few minutes, convinced to come back with flashlights. We came out to see that it was now dusk outside. When we entered, it was midday. Somehow we had lost roughly 3 hours inside of this cave. We went back with flashlights the next week, but have never been able to find this cave again. Don't use lighters in a cave. It literally could have exploded. I knew smoking would end up killing Jim. Lung cancer. No, he tried to light a cig in a gas-filled cave. I wonder if this is how stories of fire-breathing dragons inhabiting caves began. Wow. I've had something similar happen. A somewhat remote hiking trail near my hometown has a boulder field that has openings where you can explore. Some of these openings go deep into the ground with crevasses and wide openings. I went exploring with a friend, and we came across a small opening that was similarly clean. with no graffiti, beer cans, etc. that you would see in other caves. We ventured inside with just the flashlights on our phones, and as we got deeper into the hole we came across a large opening. I ventured to the other side of the clearing, thinking he was behind me the whole time. I felt him push on my arm to get me to move aside, only to hear him from the other side of the clearing freaking out, because he felt someone touch him. Needless to say, we both noped the frick out of there real quick. I've watched The Ring back in 2003 or 2004. Parents were out and it was late. I love horror movies, and generally I am not the one who is frightened. A couple of minutes after the movie ended, the landline rang. 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. Landline had no display or whatsoever. I tentatively answered, but there was no sound. Nothing. I hung up and my heart was almost bursting out of my chest. A few moments later it rang again. Was my aunt asking where my mum was? Man, these moments I was like, that cannot be. 7 days. Till Black Friday. There were two. The first one was a UFO. I saw a light streak across the sky, make a 90-degree turn and streak away until it vanished. Years later I learned that it was probably just an asteroid breaking up. Put that one to rest. Once, when I was about 8, we were driving along a road in the backcountry, and I was staring out the window, and in the distance in a field I saw a silvery, green glowing cloud that was completely unnatural. It suddenly moved, almost ran, towards the road, then up a tree just as we were passing it. As we climbed a hill, I saw it drop from the tree onto the road and float back into the fields. I've read theories about clouds like that being swarms of insects glowing because of electrical fields around them, kind of like the St. Elmo's fire phenomenon that can occur. I have no idea if that's true, but could explain the cloud that seemed to move. Once, when I was about 8, we were driving along a road in the backcountry, and I was staring out the window, and in the distance in a field I saw a silvery, green glowing cloud that was completely unnatural. Oh, that was just good old Monty Burns. All hail the glow cloud. At least 6 times in my life I've gone home. I know I locked the door, but when I'm about to put my key in, the door opens like someone was expecting me, but no one's there. It's happened at my mom's house, my house, and other people's houses. I was helping my buddy move into his new house, and when we came back with more stuff I had to pee, so I ran to the front door and it opened. When he came in, he said he locked it before we left. Don't know what it is, but maybe it's a superpower. Lazy telekinesis. Nice. Telekinesis? Super polite ghost. So, chivalry is dead? I am a TA in our college's anatomy class, which takes place in the cadaver lab. Dead bodies. Late one night, I am working alone in the cadaver lab and I start to hear a noise. It's hard to tell what the noise sounds like, but it's a consistent muffled noise. So I kind of walk around the room and locate it. Now normally the bodies are all kept in these big metal crates, but at the time we had one more body than we did crate. So one body was in a plastic body bag, and that's where the noise was coming from. So I am terrified at this point, all alone in the lab, looking down at this plastic body bag that I can see the outline of the body that presumably is coming back to life, because it is definitely making noise. I stood over this body for a solid minute, debating whether I should open the bag, and finally the noise just stops. I got all my stuff together and bolted from the lab. A couple weeks later, the professor tells me to be careful if I ever work on that body, because there is a live pacemaker in it, so don't cut into that, and it will vibrate and ring every few hours if it's low on battery. I let out the biggest sigh of relief that we weren't haunted. They vibrate when they're low on battery? That's gotta be terrifying if you have one. If the thing regulating your heart is low on battery, terror might be the correct reaction. It's quite easy to keep it charged. I once watched an excellent and informative film on this matter starring Jason Statham. I wouldn't worry. Late one night, I am working alone in the cadaver lab and I start to hear a noise. Nope. After my grandpa died, there was sightings of him throughout the neighborhood and everyone said he was smiling. Day 1511. They still think I'm a ghost. Day 1578. I am lost, and whenever I ask for directions they tell me to go towards the light. Finally got away from them all, and they'll never know. My wife and I had a 2-hour drive back from St. Louis to our home, during which both of us lost time. Woke up 3 hours later, still an hour and a half away from home, only having used enough gas to go that half hour, and our GPS showed we had been driving our normal route. We still have no freaking idea what happened, but we know we hadn't pulled over and that neither of us had any memory between taking an exit and seeing the SONW particular billboard for a restaurant we always pass. Still freaks me the frick out. When you woke up, were you pulled over or were you still driving down the road? We were driving still. We were both just suddenly very aware that something was off. Yep, aliens. When I was in the Navy, some days I would work such long hours before going on deployments that you'd start work at 6:30, leave at 10 at night, and have to be back at 6:30 again the next day. Well, naturally on those days I would be so tired that I would drive to work and have no recollection at all of how I got there. I remember getting in my car, driving down my street, and then digging around in my pockets for my ID at the gate. That's it. It really freaked me out at the time, because there were 3 stop signs that I had to pass through before I got on the freeway. I lived off base, and it was impossible to know if I actually stopped at them, or if I just mindlessly ran through them. Fricking auditory hallucinations. Frick those. Was driving down the rural really dark road at night. I'm super sleep deprived. Drank several of those 240 milligrams caffeine Monster energy drinks. I didn't have the radio on, so it was pretty quiet. Then the whispering started. I'm confused, don't understand what it is. Try to focus on it. Is my stereo not all the way off? Then it started mumbling louder. Frick, this ain't good. Then I hear a very clear turn here, but my GPS says continue for 12 miles. Hell, frick that. Nope, frick that. I turn radio on really loud and continue home. Next physical, I mention it to Doc. Am I insane? Both sleep deprivation and caffeine have been known to induce auditory hallucinations in Devili. Combining both, it's perfectly normal to hear things. If it happens again, come back in. Thought I was going mental. That or you narrowly avoided being ghost murdered. Or he avoided a ghost showing him a sick loot cache or their undiscovered corpse. He really missed his chance to go on a weird adventure that would make him question reality. It was a risky side quest. 2 days after my grandmother died, the scent of her favorite perfume just filled the bathroom. Lucky, my uncle clogged the shitter a week after he died. That's why you don't flush ashes in one big clump, dude. Just pour a spoonful down every time you send the kids to the pool. I feel like a lot of people have experienced similar sensations to the one you felt, especially for hearing or smell. You just sense them nearby a couple days after their passing. Had this happen not long ago, nearly a year after my grandmother passed. She wore Skin, a random perfume you used to buy through Avon, but is now at Walmart. I was driving to work and it filled the cabin of my work truck. I had a terrible dream when I was 10 and I called my mom to come lay with me and we passed out, I guess. I woke up staring at the back of head. Her hair looked exactly like Michael Myers. I said, "Mom." She turned around and it was her. But holy shit, I'll never forget. Groovy baby. There was an old man who lived on the road I drove every day to get to the highway. He sat on his front porch drinking his morning coffee, and he always waved at me when I drove by and I always waved back. This went on for the better part of a decade. One day I was talking to my neighbor about how much Mr. So-and-so waving made my morning awesome and I was glad he was still kicking around. My neighbor says, "Rip, what? He has been dead for 3 years. Never saw him again." Who's I waving at? Dead Tennessee man's brother found posing as him and freaking out local commuters. Side story. My grandfather and his best friend drove down this stretch of highway every day to school together. One day he waves to his neighbor who was walking on the side and he waved back. 5 miles later he saw his neighbor walking on the highway. Thought, that's weird, I just saw him. Waved again. Another couple miles. Neighbor still walking there. At this point they're freaked out and hightail it to school. 25 years later they learned the neighbor was a triplet and they did it to freak people out. Classic. Identity theft is not a joke, Jethro. Millions of families suffer every year. It's both sweet and terrifying. One morning I woke up to my alarm going off at 6:30 as usual and got up and cooked breakfast. As soon as I sat down to eat, my alarm went off again and I woke up in bed. I dreamed that I woke up and went about my morning routine. That was easily the most disorienting thing I've ever experienced. I do this way more often than I'd like. Happens if I'm overly tired or stressed. I feel defeated every time I wake up a second time to realize I am not dressed or ready to go to work at all and have to go through the whole process again. This one sounds so simple, but I think having this happen to me would be insanely surreal. When I woke up again it would be hard to not question if I was still in a dream. Inception 2. The morning routine. Up is still in a dream. We're all just figments of their imagination. Woke up to my granddad stood by the door staring at me. Scared the shit out of me and there was a flash and he was gone. He's been dead about 7 or 8 years at that point. I asked my mom, she said yeah, he often did that. He'd wake mine on up for work by knocking on the window. Mom, dead grandpa stared at me through my door today. Yeah, he does that. Make sure to close the blinds before a fap. My friend was about to clean his gun and it was pointed directly at me when it went off. For a few seconds we stood there in shock, him thinking he killed me and me in a state of pure panic. Afterwards we found the bullet embedded in a wall beside me. I will never let him live that shit down. How many beers have you got out of him for the incident so far? LMAO. To be honest, I've gotten a few. Remember the time you almost frickin' killed me due to gross negligence? This round's on you, bud. Why would he be cleaning a loaded gun while pointing it towards a person? See a dream and the next day it becomes reality. Even little details like the clothes me and my brother wore. I get this kind of shit too. Weird things I'll have in a dream, then it happens within the next few days. Stuff like someone saying something specific or other stuff that's slipping my mind ATM. I get this too. Mine is usually always a few weeks, months later, so I always get wicked deja vu until I can figure out why I remember it. It's always super mundane, but it's usually something random enough that I think it was a dream until it happens. It happened just the other day where my girlfriend was showing me something and I asked her, "Haven't you shown me this before?" when what it was had just arrived. This used to happen to me all the time when I was younger, like seeing exact scenarios with people I'd never met before in dreams would actually happen in reality years later. I started keeping a dream diary to prove to myself I wasn't going mad. I would have chalked this up as a dream, except I know I was awake because I really had to pee. I woke up in the middle of the night, having to pee really bad as mentioned above, and from my position on the top bunk I could see into the hallway. The bathroom was right across the hall from my bedroom door and also right in my vision. I was just starting move to climb down and go to bathroom when I saw, heard, and felt the footsteps of a man coming down the hall and going into the bathroom. I thought it must be my dad, but that was strange, because he and my mom had their own bathroom. Even stranger, he didn't turn on the light or close the door. So after a while I got annoyed, because I really had to go, and I called out to him. No answer. So I finally climbed down and switch on the light, and find an empty bathroom. I had definitely seen a figure, heard the footsteps, and felt the vibrations of the footsteps of a large man come down the hall and go in there. I was about 10 when this happened, but I remember it so vividly, because that is freakiest thing that's ever happened to me, paranormally speaking. When I was just old enough to not need a childminder after school, I was home alone one summer's day. My parents, who would not be back until later, made me promise to lock the door and not answer the door to strangers. I did this religiously, as I was also anxious about being in the house by myself. There was a hefty bolt on our front door, and I was to make sure I used it. I would see my folks come home and know to unlock it. So I'm in the house, playing with Lego upstairs. I hear the unmistakable sound of the front door open and close. I even felt the percussive thud that was so familiar as the door closed. Thinking one of my parents must have come home early, I went down to greet them. No one there. I then saw the bolt was still across. Now my blood runs cold as I start racing through the possibilities to explain this. I check all doors and windows in panic. All locked. It was a standard 4-bedroom family house, not a mansion. Easily checked. I am alone in the house. So how the frick is the bolt across? Impossible to open that door from the outside. Key or no key, I'm sure it was the door I heard. The house was silent and it was a very loud and distinctive noise. It did not compute. I noped out of there fast and went to a friend's house. He did not believe me and was certain I was winding him up. A similar thing happened when I was babysitting my friend's kids, except I had gone to the loo and heard the door open and close. I shot that I'm in the loo and will be out in a minute. I come back to the living room and no one is there. So I checked the door, but the bolt had been unlocked from inside. I had pulled it across after my friends had left, and the kids were 2 and 4 so wouldn't have been able to reach it. I wander around their house looking for any sign of person entering, and there is nothing. I go back to the door, and the goddamn dog has just stood there with a dumb expression on his face. Freaked me out massively and I spent the whole night in constant fear of being jumped by a spirit. It wasn't until a few years later that I found out accidentally that the dog could unbolt the door by repeatedly pressing his weight on it and shimmying it over and over until the bolt was wiggled free. He couldn't open the door at that point, as it had been locked with a key also. But I'd spent a whole evening having a heart attack and it was the bloody dog the whole time. Once woke up to the sound of heavy breathing and felt as if I was being watched. I couldn't move for a while either. Then I just blurted out my dog's name and kept calling for him. He didn't run over, and as soon as I could get myself to move I went looking for him. Found him sitting in the kitchen doorway, just staring straight forward. I started calling him from right behind him and he wouldn't even turn around. Then I touched his back and he turned to glance at me, but went right back to his trance. A year or so after the fact, I found out that the first thing was probably sleep paralysis. Not too sure about what was going on with the dog though. That's exactly what happened to my dog, too. 3 of my siblings went to Dad's house and I stayed behind with my oldest brother. He was about to go to sleep when he sees the dog blankly staring at the corner of my sister's empty bunk bed. He called the dog several times, but he didn't answer. Super creepy, man. What would be really creepy is if the dog does answer. One night I was on Stephen Hawking's Wikipedia page and I thought to myself, damn, he looks a lot worse. What if he died tonight? Next morning I wake up to Stephen Hawking dead. You killed the old bastard. My so and I are from different states, but we used to vacation at the same location. Saw what I believed to be myself at middle school age in the back of one of their pictures. Little did you know that your so had selected you from the picture and become obsessed from afar. I know someone who used to be a model. He saw a magazine ad with a woman in it, and he thought she was the most beautiful person ever, and he cut the picture out and kept it in his wallet. Eventually they did a shoot together, and he talked to her and they started dating. And he made a bold move and told her the picture story, which creeped her out and she left. I'm really happy with how that story turned out, grounded in reality. I was driving back home at night a couple of weeks ago and I passed a sign that stated a town was coming up. This town is 10 miles from my hometown. The sign said it was 10 miles, so I continued driving. I drive 10 miles, don't see the exit, look up and see the sign that said the town is 10 miles away. It was like I hadn't moved. I went past the same exit again too. No one believes me. P.S. Didn't know my highest rated Reddit comment would come from this. There's a book with this plot line. How some roads in America slip you into another time or place. If I remember what it was called, I'll post back. Sounds exactly like what you described, so it might be fun for you to read it. Could you be thinking of either Strange Highways by Dean Koontz or the short story Mrs. Todd's Shortcut by Stephen King? Mrs. Todd's Shortcut was my first thought. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and leave a comment which story you liked the most. Subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on our latest videos. And don't forget to check the links in the description box for more awesome content.